Welcome back to another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Today, I'm with a guest, and his name is Ted Ryce. He's the host of the Legendary Life podcast, where they have over 500 episodes about body transformation, fat loss, and doing it all remotely as well, because Ted Ryce has been working remotely. And where are you at, Ted, right now, currently?
I'm in Brazil, Brasilia, Brazil, which is
Boom.
the capital of Brazil.
That's awesome. And you've been down there for a while now, right?
Yeah, I lived in Brazil 8 months last year, half of the time in Brasilia, half of the time in Florianopolis, which is an amazing place down there in the south. Not that well known by Americans, but a lot of Europeans travel there for vacation. And then
Hmm.
now this time I've been here 3 months. So I spent almost a year in Brazil, 11 months in Brazil by the time I leave at the end of August.
And how do you manage to do that?
What do you mean?
I guess both in terms of work and then in terms of visa.
Yeah. I mean, well, as an American, I get 90 days in Brazil without doing an extension. So I get 90 days here. I think 6 months in Mexico. I think it's 90 days in Colombia as well. And so, man, I don't typically I don't have any long term visas. I've just been hopping around. And this journey started for me in 2018 with, I know this is the My Latin Life podcast, but uh, I was in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Bali, Malaysia, Vietnam. And yeah, so I've just been hopping around and I've been doing it ever since February of 2018. And it's getting a little bit, I'm wanting to set up shop somewhere and settle down a bit, but it's been just, well, an amazing time and truly, like, you know how it is, Vance, when you get experienced all these different cultures, it changes your life.
That's awesome. And I think I first found out about you on Twitter, and I saw photos of you like working out in what definitely looked like Medellin or Bogota in the background. And
Hmm.
I noticed that you weren't really like your online persona wasn't really necessarily about the travel or about Latin America. It took actually a little bit of digging to even find out that you weren't like in the United States.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people who listen to my podcast have shared my travels. You know, I would start the podcast when I was in Thailand. I was like, Sawadee Krap. I'd start the podcast and try to bring a little bit of the culture that I was living in to the people who are listening to my show. Um, but but yeah, I'm really focused on helping. I work mostly with entrepreneurs, executives, founders, other high performance professionals, and I help them get fit. And while I don't even think I have one other nomadic client, it would be fun to have a nomadic client actually. But yeah, because we could maybe actually hang out in person. And I do in person events. I've got one in Mexico coming up where I'm going to be meeting with a client for 3 days. But he's a sit. He's uh, running his company. He's got to be there most weeks of the
Right.
year.
Yeah, I guess more of the travel stuff comes out on your podcast, huh?
Yeah, and it's something that I want to talk more about because, as you know, Vance, like, it changes how you see things. It changes how you see health. It changes, like, most Americans, for example, they think that, oh, well, I'm obese, but not as obese as that person. And then you go to Thailand, and statistically speaking, they have a obesity crisis there, but everybody looks skinny. And the same thing in Brazil, where I am right now. What I love about Brazil in particular, in Brasilia, in the location where I'm at, is in DF, the federal district, is there's parks. On Sundays, they close down the major street. I don't know what the name of it is, forgot, but they close down the street. And so you start to see, like, oh man, people love to eat in Brazil, right? Steak, the churrascarias, the picanha, caipirinhas.
Hmm.
etc. But like they also have a very active lifestyle. And then you start to, even in Miami, Miami people are pretty fit as well, but like people take health more seriously here. I feel like people in Miami, it's like, I got to hit the club, I got to hit the workout first, because if not, I'm not going to be able to drink champagne and snort, Coke all night. Right. So it's not really that health oriented, I feel. Um, so by traveling, I want to incorporate more of the lessons I've learned in traveling. That's just, I'm working on that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I actually would love to hear the whole story, including the Asia stuff. So basically, how you left Miami and kind of what your trajectory has been like since then, across all the continents.
Yeah, cool. So, um, a lot of people know me back in Miami because I was a personal trainer for over 20 years there. I started in 1999. I worked with celebrities like Robert Downey Jr., Ricky Martin, worked with Richard Branson for one morning, but worked with his wife quite a bit. So I had a good thing going there. And I had a lot of club owner clients, restaurant owner clients, a lot of entrepreneurs of different types of businesses. It was good in a way, but I just felt like I got to a point where, especially with personal training, it's a bit of hand holding. And I really wanted to do more, and I wanted to help people more. And I wanted to help people really transform their bodies. And I felt like I was in a rut. And at the same time, I felt like I had outgrown Miami. And now I like my city, but I had been there for a long time. And it's got a certain vibe down there if you've ever been. And one of the things I like about it, it does have like, My Latin Life podcast could totally include Miami,
For
with the
sure.
vibe there. But I needed to get out. I needed a change of environment. And yeah, I was married at the time, and my wife, who's actually my business partner still, we ended the personal relationship, but we still have a professional relationship. And she just looked at me. It's like, we have a little bit of money in the bank, and we could pay off some of our debts and just keep doing what we're doing, or we could leave. And we had met people who had done that, who became digital nomads, and in this case, they went to Thailand. And
Hmm.
it took me about like maybe 10 seconds. I was thinking, I was like, okay, I'm in. I want to get out of here. And
And at this point where you're booking the flight to Asia, how many of the podcast episodes had you recorded of the 500 plus? And how much of your client base or how much money were you making online?
yeah, we making money online was really sporadic for us. I don't remember how much, but it wasn't that consistent. So we weren't leaving like, oh man, we're making enough money. This is just we're gonna keep growing. We had run some coaching programs, and we made a few $1,000s here and there, and we tried some other things, affiliates, but we didn't have anything systematized. And as far as how many podcast episodes, um, I had been doing it. So I've been doing this for about 7 years. So if we subtract 4 years from that, I've been doing it about, in between 3 or 4 years. So there were, half of our episodes were up already.
Cool.
And yeah, we still win anyway.
That's awesome. Well, you had already basically taken steps in an entrepreneurial direction, and you must have known that you wanted to build out the online segment more.
For sure, Vance. I mean, the situation, to go into a little bit more detail, we had started the podcast. We knew it was the way forward, although we didn't see exactly what that was going to look like at the end, but we knew like, okay, these are the steps we need to keep taking, and the steps that we need to stop taking. My Giselle, my business partner, she had stopped working. She's a marketing professional. She had stopped working for, she was doing marketing consulting for businesses there. She's Brazilian, so she was working with these businesses who had Brazilian clients and helping with their marketing. I was training, I already told you who I was training. And yeah, so we knew we wanted to do something online. And we just knew we had built some things out, but it was so hard to kind of have the headspace to create something when we kept having like to go to work and do stuff, or at least I had to go to work. She was working for the podcast full time at that point. And so we knew we wanted to do something online. We weren't sure what it was going to look like, but we had some few ideas. And when I got to Asia, man, I mean, like we had some ideas. I have a little bit of a name um, internationally, not much of one, but a little bit of one, enough to kind of try to put together some seminars for personal trainers to teach them how to get better results with their clients.
Mm-hmm.
And we had that scheduled for the Philippines. We had it scheduled for Australia. And everything just fell apart. We tried to do Hong Kong, Malaysia. It all fell apart. And then we came back to the coaching idea, and just like we needed to do something. There's some other, I'm shortening this a lot, but at the end of the road, the journey to figuring out what to move forward with, we had done coaching already, and it was like, okay, we need to figure out, like, we need to go back to what was successful. And we ended up finding someone, oh gosh, what's his name? Russ Rufino. And he has like a high ticket coaching model, and we learned from him. And the rest is history, man. That started like, I started going full into my online coaching, started getting clients great results, and I'm making a lot more money than I did when I was training all those famous people back in back in Miami Beach. And I love my life now. I get to travel around, and just it wouldn't have been possible had I not taken that first leap.
Yeah. So you trained Iron Man and Richard Branson.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm probably one of the few people who are not, like super high level entrepreneurs that Richard Branson would pay to talk to. One of the few mini entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs, baby business owners that Richard Branson has actually paid money for me to spend time with me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, tell us a little bit about how, you crushed Asia and then eventually made your way to Latin America.
Yeah. Thailand was just, Giselle's from Brazil. So she didn't want to come back. In fact, while we were together, I had never even been to Brazil. She never didn't want to go. She really wanted to get away from Brazil. And I love Brazil, but I could see why people from here feel that way. And
Hmm.
so that's in part why we decided to go to Asia. And when we got there, it was such a culture shock. It's not like, whoa, everybody's speaking Spanish in Colombia. What a culture shock. It's like, man, I don't understand anything. Like, Thai language is so difficult, and it's so wildly just the culture is so beautifully and strangely different. It's Buddhist culture. And it just, when I first got there, I was a fish out of water. I was like, I'm a tall white dude. I feel like people are looking at me, and I just moved here. Bangkok, if you've ever been there, it's not a particularly beautiful city. It's it's really urban and industrial, but it was such an incredible time. We were treated with such kindness. We stayed in a very like local area of Thailand. I forget the station that we stayed off the BTS, in case there's any Thailand lovers there. But I started training Muay Thai there. Oh my God, the food is so incredible. If you love Thai food, you must get yourself to Thailand. It is Going to Thailand
Makes
is a
sense.
life changing
Makes sense.
experience for anyone. What's that?
Makes sense.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But it was incredible, and we ended up in Bali and all these other places, and yeah, and that became normal life. And then eventually we moved back to Giselle and I split up. personally. And I came back to this side of the world to be closer to my family in the United States.
Hmm.
So I ended up in Mexico, Colombia, and Brazil.
That's awesome. I'm guessing it was the type of thing where you went back to the States at the start of 2020 and then eventually kind of maybe made your way to Mexico or something.
What had happened is I left Thailand in early 2020. I came to see my dad in Vero Beach, Florida. And, every time I come back, I don't know if you feel this way too, Vance, but I spent even a month in Miami recently. Every time I go back to the States, I'm like, ooh, this is cool, but I think elsewhere is cooler. Now I love the United States. I love being American. I'm very proud to be an American, and traveling has even made me more is really that's where the pride has come from, to see how special the United States is. But I think it's a very unhealthy place, and it's not even. I'm not going to even say I think it is. 70% of the people are struggling with their weight. That's just a symptom of the psychological stress that people are under in the United States, the culture, and I ended up going to Colombia right before the pandemic started. I was there for actually I arrived there on my birthday, February 2nd. I arrived in Medellin, and it was in March 15th or 16th that the whole pandemic started, and I
Hmm.
spent the whole lockdown there in Colombia. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you touched on a lot of things that I wanted to ask about, but I almost don't want to disrupt the flow. So, what was it like? I guess was this your first time in Colombia?
On February 2nd, yeah. Now I had been to Costa Rica before, I've been to Mexico before, but this was my first time to Colombia. And it was kind of cool. I was going to go to Lima, or I was going to go to Buenos Aires. And I was like, man, which one should I go to? I actually posted on Facebook and asked people. And someone who I didn't know at the time, but we were Facebook friends and would later become a friend of mine, James, um, he he said, "Oh, you got to go to Medellin." And I wasn't quite sure what he was hinting at, but it was like, "No, you got to go to Medellin." And so he kind of hinted. I was single at the time, and he was like, "Oh, you got to go there." And I was like, "Okay, all right, I'm gonna go. It's closer
Okay.
than Argentina." And while the food in Lima, Peru, sounds amazing, and I want to do the Machu Picchu thing, I really, I'm okay. I'm sold. And he was going to be there as well. So we ended up meeting up, and that's one of the beautiful things about like what we do, I think, is we get to connect with people on social media, and then you can actually meet them in person and build out your social circle that way. So yeah, that was the first time in Colombia, and had a great time there until the great pandemic of 2020 started.
But you stuck it through.
Yeah, and it was a strict lockdown too. But I'd rather be where I was in Colombia with that strict lockdown in my nice apartment with the beautiful view of Medellin and a huge balcony where I could get outside. That's where you saw that photo taken, was on that balcony, huge
Yeah, the one
balcony.
you what's it called? Stapled. What's the word? Stapled to your Twitter.
Exactly. Yeah, pinned to my
Pins.
Twitter profile. Yeah.
So maybe this would be a good time to ask a little bit about home workouts and workouts for a digital nomad, because typically a nomad is not going to have access to a gym that might be going from city to city. I'm an absolute expert at finding outdoor calisthenic gyms and working out at the outdoor gym. So that's what I do.
Cool.
What do you do?
Yeah, it really depends. But these days, because I've done a lot of things over the years, I've been in this business 23 years. I've been working out since I was 12. But now, what I do, like what I've been doing recently, is kind of what I've been doing when I was in Colombia, locked in that room, because I'm really focused on growing my business right now and growing specifically my reach. And I've used bands. And while it's a good segue, because while I was in Colombia locked in a room, I got better results than people with a full gym. And people were asking me like, how are you getting like, are you taking the steroids? I'm like, man, I'm locked in a room in Colombia. I can't even leave like you people in America. It's like, we suggest that you stay at home. It's like, no, if I leave, I'm going to get a $300 fine and hassled by the police. So I just, stayed put.
Hmm.
Um, and so I just used bands. And more specifically, I know principles that lead to getting great results and a few tricks as well. So I used a band routine, a band and body weight routine, and I applied the principles that we know work. So take use good form on exercise. So if you're adding weight and your squats all of a sudden go, you're only going halfway down, or you're bench pressing, you're going halfway down, you might be working your ego, but you're not going to be getting the best gains when you do that. And I unfortunately made that mistake a lot when I was younger. I'm 45 now, so in my 20s. So use good form. The second thing would be to slow down your movements. A big problem that I see with people, especially athletes, and again, I'm guilty of this too, because I'm more of an athlete. I'm not like a bodybuilder guy, right? I love
Hmm.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, scuba diving, that type of thing, right? And so slowing down your reps, because if you're more athletic, you want to get through things fast. Or if you're just a person who's like, man, I don't have time to be working out, but I'll do it. Let me rush through it. But slowing down your reps, and what we know is if you take about 3 seconds on the way down and 3 seconds on the way up, you're going to get way better results than if you just rush through the reps and hit your 8 or 12 or 20 or whatever it is and say, okay, I did my reps. No, go slow. And don't worry about the weight. Don't worry about how many you do. The form and the speed of the rep execution, that matters most. And that's what I did in that room. And the next thing after that would be to apply what I call the one more rep rule. So always doing one more rep than what you did last time, right? Always doing one more rep than what you did last time. And so if you did, like, for example, I was doing band resisted push-ups in the room because there's a lot of there's some studies showing like band resisted push-ups are as effective as bench press at stimulating your chest. So so for example, let's say I got 15 reps with like a medium band, so I'll go for 16 reps with the same band, and the workout after that 17 reps. And if you do that and consistently do that over time, it's going to lead to big changes. Now, after adding reps, add weight. So eventually you'll have to go from that medium band, to use the same example, you have to go to like the medium heavy band. And then again, you start the process, figure out how many reps you can get with that medium heavy band, and then again, start to add more reps over time. And then the final thing would be to eventually add sets. But adding sets is the thing that you do last, or the
Hmm.
thing that I do recommend people do last. And the reason is it takes more time to do it, and it's harder on your body to do it. And you really got to cycle through the volume. You can't just stay at 5 or 6 sets per exercise every time you train. It's going to get pretty hard to maintain that, and the workouts are going to get long. But you can start to do that if you're at a position right now where it's like, man, Ted, I hear you. I'm already using good technique. I've been doing this for a while. My reps are, slow enough to stimulate the muscle. And, I've been adding reps, but kind of hit a wall, can't add weight without, something happening, let's just say, then that's when you start adding sets. So that's what I did in that room, man. And my body got I got called the white Bruce Lee. So, which I took as a big compliment.
And so, what percentage of your home workouts are you using resistance bands?
Yeah. Almost the entire workout for the upper body. For the lower body, I'm just using body weight exercises like Bulgarian split squats, that type of thing.
Okay. Yeah, I've tried because it's so easy to travel with resistance bands that I guess that would be part of like any fitness enthusiast Nomad travel kit.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm like you, man. I like calisthenics. It's just I find weights boring, which is okay, by the way. If you love weights and doing powerlifting, cool. And Vance, you like doing calisthenics. I like that too. That's why I prefer. So I travel with gymnastics rings too. But right now, I don't want to say I'm too lazy to go to the gym, which is like a 5-minute walk. I'm staying in like, the most well-known hotel here in Brasilia, and the gym's like a 5-minute walk. But it's like I can stay here and crush my work and listen to things while I'm working out. So that's what I've been doing.
Hmm. So I have kind of like a home, what's it called, body weight routine, but I don't use resistance bands. I don't know. I just never had anyone teach me, and so I've tried and just never got hyped up about it. How do you get someone hyped up about resistance bands?
You know what? That's such a great point. So, number one, people hate training with resistance bands, and for good reason. Resistance bands, number one, they're really funky to use because the more you stretch a rubber band, everyone knows this. The more you stretch a rubber band, the more resistance you get, and that can be good for exercises like push-ups or overhead presses or even squats or deadlifts if that's what you're into. That's even a powerlifting technique, is adding bands. It's called accommodating resistance. So you actually get stronger faster, you get better results by using bands on pushing exercises like I mentioned. Any pushing exercise um, that you can attach the bands to: overhead press, bench press, um, deadlift, squats too. But when you do pulling exercises, that then they suck. They're too easy at the beginning and they're too hard at the end, especially with the thicker bands. So here's what you got to do. Number one, you have to understand, like, you have to be taught how to use them or they're going to suck. And also you have to use the right bands. I use body elastics bands. And what's really important is you don't get the thick ass resistance bands. You have to use multiple smaller ones that add up to a higher weight. Otherwise, it's going to be like super easy when you start and then feel like impossible to move because the resistance goes up exponentially when you pull a rubber band. So you have
Mm.
to get multiple bands on it. So it's a little bit of a learning curve to do it properly. But I teach my clients, every client who joins my coaching program, we send them the Body Elastics band set, and we teach them how to do it. I have videos on how to do it properly. And so you can get great results with resistance bands, but I'm not super excited about using them. I just think I like calisthenics way more: pull ups, ring rows, ring dips, you know, um, outside of like using the accommodating resistance exercises, like doing a push up with a rubber band. I don't really love using bands. It's just, it works when you're on the road and you're in a place where maybe you're not going to go to the gym, right? Because you're too lazy or there's not one around. So it's just good in that way.
Hmm. Definitely. I think we'll come back to some gym stuff after, but I'd love to just like keep the flow going of where you've been. So
Sure.
basically Asia up to the pandemic started, uh, went back to Florida, needed a little bit more adventure, and then you started in Colombia. And then what happened from there?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a crazy story. So when I came back from Thailand, I was only in Vero Beach, Florida for a week, and then I was off to Colombia. And I was there for 4 months. And the reason I left, because I would have probably stayed there much longer, is my dad got sick, and he ended up passing away. So I ended up going back to the U.S. in May and just staying there. And he passed away on October 20th. And after that, while he was sick, I was really stressed out because it was just I knew he was dying, and he was 76, so it was kind of and not in great health, so it was kind of his time. But I took a trip to Mexico and had a really nice experience there. I was there for, I forget how long, just a couple weeks, not even 2 weeks, I think. but I needed a break. And in that time, I, did an ayahuasca session there. What else did I do? I started doing cave diving. I love scuba diving. I got certified in Phuket, Thailand. And so I started doing cave diving, which is really cool to do in that area of Playa del Carmen, Tulum,
Hmm.
Cancun, Mexico. And so I started doing that, but had to come back. He ended up passing away. And man, after that, I was like, fuck, I tried staying in, I went to Orlando for a little bit, but I just needed to leave the United States again. So I found myself back in Mexico after that. And I left Mexico at the end of 2020. And my business partner, Giselle, she's like, listen, and she helped me with my dad during those last months of 2020. She's like, look, come to Brazil. Spend the holidays with us. If you don't like it, you don't have to stay. But I think it'll be a good change for you. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. So I went to Brazil with her, got COVID on the flight. The flight's terrible to Brazil. It's so hard to get to Brasilia, Brazil in particular. Rio's a bit easier. But man, ended up in Brazil. And right away, so just to give you a little bit of context, I got a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. I did a lot of Brazilian jiu-jitsu in Miami. It's a great place with a lot of high level people. But I
Hmm.
got kind of tired of like the Brazilian attitude that I was dealing with there, especially from the jiu-jitsu guys. I was like, some of them are cool, but I got into some crowds. I was just like, man, I'm just tired of these guys. And so I didn't really want to come. It was my whole dream to come to Brazil and train Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So I didn't even really want to go. But as soon as I got to the airport in Sao Paulo, I was like, man, I really like the vibe of people. Cause I don't know if you feel this way, Vance, but like, after traveling so much, I can get to a place and pick up on the vibe of people and kind of know if I'm going to enjoy that place or not.
Hmm.
And right away, um, I felt good in Brazil, and that led to me staying for 8 months here, and that was last year.
So, Ted, what were a couple of the first things that you picked up on when you landed in Brazil? What are the things that stood out to you about the Brazilian vibe?
Yeah, at first I couldn't put my finger on it, but Brazilians walk slow. And they just walk slow, and I don't mean slow like really slow. I mean like I walk fast, and like I feel like a weirdo walking at my normal pace. I got to kind of slow down. So Brazilians walk slow, they stroll, they're like not in a hurry. And just the way they greet you, bom dia, tudo bem, como você está, the way they, just
Uh-huh.
the tonality of their language. And even though I speak basic Portuguese now, but I didn't speak any. I spoke like zero Portuguese when I first arrived. Uh, it just, you could tell the attitude, and obviously not everybody's. I've had some experiences here that weren't pleasant, but for the most part, it's been one of the. If I was going to live anywhere in South America, Brazil, hands down. And I'm single. I mean, like Brazilian culture in terms of the women are amazing. I think beautiful, very fun and communicative. Or I don't know, actually, I don't know if that's an English word, but that's
Yep.
what they
Yep.
say. They're communicative. They communicate
In what
well.
way? In what way?
Just they're they're easy to talk to. Like for example, I was in a concert in Goiânia. No, I'm sorry, Pirenópolis, which
Hmm.
is about it's in the state of Goiás. It's like uh, about an hour away, 2 hours away from where I'm at right now in the capital. And I was in this concert. And if you go to a concert in Miami, it's what I'm used to. You need to kind of watch your ass, right? Like someone's going to start a fight or do something stupid or get too messed up. They drank too much or on drugs. And just like everybody was well behaved, And I'm not saying Brazil's perfect, because people always tell me when I say nice things about a country, they're like, "Oh man, but it's like I know about the problems better than most people after living here for nearly a year." But everywhere has problems, and I really like the vibe. Like, I was in this concert, and this guy in front of me, he was smoking a ton of weed, and he was like he just started a conversation with me. I mean, I couldn't hear him that well. The music was loud, and I don't speak Portuguese that well. But, he was just like, people were talking to each other, and there wasn't like a standoffish vibe. And I really like that about Brazilian culture.
Hmm.
And they're very family oriented too, to the point where it can be a problem. There's, some of the women might tell you like, "Oh, well, the guys here, they get raised by their moms, and they're like, little boys when they're like 40 years old." And okay, fine. But I grew up where it's like, "Well, son, you're 18, time for you to leave." It's like, "But I don't know how to do anything on my own." "Yeah, you'll figure it out or you won't, but it's what we do here. See you later." You know what I mean? And so they're
No,
really
I've
more
enjoyed
family
that. I
oriented.
mean, when I moved to Latin America, I immediately noticed. I was like, why are we partying with like 10-year-old kids? It's
Yeah,
like, oh, that's
exactly.
that's that's like the cousins, bro. It's like, all right,
Yeah, it's with the cousins, exactly. I've got a niece who's 10. I'm not, exactly her uncle, but she can, I'm like Uncle Ted or Chio Ted, right? So,
Chio Ted.
exactly. And so, like, it just I've never had that vibe. Even I love my cousins dearly. Um, but even us, where it's like, "Hey, what's going on? Okay, how about you? All right, good." It's like not singing and it's not dancing and laughing, and just Brazilians, you'll sit down and you'll have conversation, you'll just talk for hours. And what I think they get that Americans maybe don't, it's like you get health. So there's certainly physical health, but there's social health too. And
Emotional.
exactly, and emotional health, but specifically like emotional health that we get from spending time with other people.
Hmm.
And I love that about Latin American culture in general, and especially about the way that Brazilians do it.
Yeah, I think this is something that I really want to capture on the My Latin Life podcast because it's very difficult to do in a tweet. It's difficult to do in text format, to capture the essence of just how much socialness there is in Latin America, and how you'll just end up talking to people for like hours and hours, and no one needs to go. People aren't looking for the door. People are genuinely enjoying each other's time.
Yeah, it's like spending time with people lessens anxiety instead of increases it. And I feel like sometimes in the States, there's a lot of pressure. American guys, it's like, "Oh, well, how much money do you make? Or what do you do? Or where'd you go to school?" And there's more of a competition. And one thing I like, I've talked about the women here, but I really like Brazilian guys too. And in the sense that, like, it's like, it's so interesting. Like, I get more of a competitive vibe from Americans, not all, right, of course, but just I'm thinking back about some of my exchanges in Miami, which
Yeah,
isn't
it's
exactly.
standoffish.
It's standoffish. It's like, "Oh, I'm cooler than you, I think, but not really. I'm insecure, and I really just want you to like me, but I'm going to pretend like I'm cooler than you because maybe that'll make that happen. But I'm just going to go home, and why am I feel so alone? And then the guys here, they're, they're they're manly and they are more social. They're more manly than
Yeah.
your average. I've learned a lot about like how to
They're
treat
just
women
not
here.
career oriented, so there's almost nothing to compete on except maybe girls.
Yeah, and even with competition with women, certainly that's a thing. But like, there's just,
They
I
have an
think, a
abundance
more
mindset about that too, I think.
exactly, exactly. There's total like I remember I was talking to some American girls, and just, when you look in, like, you guys say a lot of, I don't want to talk about my dating, um, you know,
Yeah,
philosophies
it's
here
cool. It's
too
cool.
much.
Yeah, you don't have to do,
But
don't
one
make
thing
me
I'll
say
tell
anything
you,
that you're gonna have to edit out.
yeah, I know, no, but one thing I'll tell you is just like when you look in a girl's eyes and it's really about oh, does he think I'm just like the best thing around? And then being in South America, especially in Brazil for me, Medellin's another good place, but my heart is in Brazil. It's like, no, I'm not that, you're beautiful, but I just, you once you have that abundance mentality, it just like women can feel that, just like if you're on a sales call and you don't need to be there, the other person can feel that. And that's something you can't fake by like some of the things that we see on Twitter, like, oh, I didn't lean into the photo. It's like that doesn't matter that much, those techniques. It's really about the vibe you're giving off. And yeah, and I've have more of that now, where I used to feel very scarce about the dating scene in Miami.
Yeah, it's tough to have an abundance mindset when when you have a scarcity reality, and there's only so much mindset that can overcome like the reality of where you are. And sometimes you do need to move because it is quite location dependent. And as much as we talk about dating markets being internationalized because of Instagram and stuff, the differences locally are enormous. You probably even noticed it just going from Medellin to Brazil, that the dynamic was very different.
Yeah, yeah, dating markets, it's a really important concept, because you can and by the way, I mean, when I go back to Miami, I don't have a like, now it's easy, but I don't like the culture there, the dating culture specifically,
I wouldn't
because
either, and I'll tell you why. Because you won't be able to get a girl to just do something simple like go for a stroll in the park or get ice cream. Everything has to be like absolutely like 10 out of 10
I've got to go
adrenaline
to Prime
because
112
because
and be
if
seen.
because it's just what they have so much competing for their attention that it's like kind of not a healthy market because yeah, it's just all about like attention.
Yeah, yeah, it becomes really weird, and yeah, I don't have problems dating anymore at 45. Maybe talk to me in 10 years, and I'll, but I'm looking to get married now and settle down. I want that. I've
Hmm.
had my fun, but like absolutely going from, to your point, like even going from Medellin to Brazil. Now, here's what I'll say about Medellin. Um, I love Medellin. The people are so nice there. I was treated extremely well there. The food is amazing. The thing that I have a challenge with in Medellin, and the women are beautiful, the guys are cool too. The thing that I have an issue with is like, and this isn't like an issue. I'll just come out and say it. Like, they're in Medellin in particular. It's like, it was the murder capital. I don't know about of the world, but a lot of bad things happen there, and it just has that vibe still. And while I like it as a city, I feel like, for example, I dated a girl there, and her father was a successful businessman. They were raised well. She was beautiful, but her father was murdered, by these guys who just wanted his money. But his father, I mean, her father, for whatever reason, like resisted arrest, resisted the robbery, which is the number one reason statistically why tourists get killed
Hmm. Hmm.
in Latin America. Is when you don't, like, even I got a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I'm just going to be handing over my money. I'm not going to try
Hmm.
to,
So
because
Medellin,
people will shoot you.
you definitely need to be careful. You can't really have your phone out in the street. Are you finding Brazil by comparison uh, a little bit safer in comparison?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm in Brasilia, Brazil. It's, if you want to go to a place in Brazil and have zero problems, Brasilia is a good place to do that. If you go to Sao Paulo, or Rio, which I haven't been to either, but what people tell me is that, is it violent? Well, I know some people who've been robbed at gunpoint there, but it's mostly kids snatching your phone out of your hand. So people will say, Brazilians will say, "Well, watch out, you can get assaulted." But what they really mean usually is someone will snatch your phone, which sucks if you're running a business from your phone. Like I use my phone for work too, for the social media stuff in particular. But yeah, so I find it. I'll tell you, walking the streets of Poblado, I feel safer in all the areas that I've been in Brazil. So I've been to Brasilia, Florianopolis, and Balneario Camboriú. I felt safer there in all those places than I did in Medellin. But to be honest, I've never had a problem in Medellin. I've been treated really well. It just kind of feels like, you
Hmm.
know, kind of feels like something could have. There's a little bit more electricity in the air, I would say, in
Hmm.
Medellin.
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome that you've been to Balneario Camboriú as well as Florianopolis. How much time have you spent in Camboriú?
Not much, just probably a week, but it's nice. It's because it's a small place, but it is nice to visit there.
Hmm. What was your? Do you have any thoughts on sort of like Florianopolis versus Camboriú in terms of the difference in the vibe?
Yeah, Camboriú is a lot smaller. A lot of luxury buildings there. When I stayed in Florianopolis, I was in Beira, which is like, in the central part of uh, Florianopolis.
Hmm.
So it was a good place to branch out. I was very safe there, and it was good to like branch out and go to different places. I like Floripa better, especially that Beira area. Um, Jurerê is cool too, but it's a little more, I don't know, calm except for the party scene, and that's really not my thing anymore. But I prefer. I don't know. I would have to experiment a little bit more. But I would prefer. I think there's more stuff to do in Floripa.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't know. Something about Camboriú is interesting because it's a bit more dense. It might be a little easier to get around without a car, and it seems pretty
Very
action
true.
packed.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, I'm with you there.
I think they're both cool, and hopefully this winter I can get down there. We have a couple friends of the podcast in both towns, so I would enjoy it.
Yeah. Have you been yet?
I haven't been down there. I haven't been to the southeast, I guess you'd call it. The furthest south I've been would be Sao Paulo and Foz do Iguaçu.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Places I want to go as well, but haven't been. But I really like the South and Floripa. Man, it's super safe there for sure. In the Centro area, people are out walking along the beach at in the night, and there's no. Yeah, it's safer than Brasilia. Here in Brasilia, it's quite safe, but my friend just got robbed. Uh, he's a Brazilian dude, does very well, has a CBD business, and
Hmm.
he got a gun shoved in his face and his Rolex taken. So
Damn.
don't wear Rolexes down south of the border, guys.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
He's Brazilian
So
too. He should know better, but
speaking
he's
of
got insurance.
Brazilian friends, I mean, tell us a little bit about what you've been doing to make friends in Brazil. Do you find most of your friends come from like the BJJ or the gym?
Yeah. Actually, I met cross really through other people, and I was invited to an art exhibit. There's an art, what do you call it? Art dealer uh, that my business partner was connected with through her family. And so I met her, went to dinner over at their house, ended up meeting her sister and her sister's husband. They own a CrossFit gym. And, everybody's like art, and it's a modern art, which is totally not my thing. Like more traditional stuff or more abstract, like psychedelic art. And so her and we got into a conversation about training. We follow some of the same people. And so it's really just, getting out there and talking to people. Who else? I met a guy at the barber shop. He's from Porto Alegre, and started talking. I'm supposed to see him. I'm only going to be here for 9 more days. So I probably won't have to do that. Won't do that much, but yeah, you get out there. I'd say one thing though, it's a little bit tough. You got to know some Portuguese, and Brazil. That's probably the one thing. It's a great place, and I think it's a place everyone should visit if they're interested in South America. Such a amazing place. The food's amazing. People are amazing, but definitely there's not a lot of English speakers here for sure.
To me,
But if you're
that's
willing to
part of the
learn,
appeal is that like
me
if
too.
if you're willing to invest a little bit of time, the payoff is huge because most people aren't willing to make that investment.
Yeah.
And
Pimsleur,
what
Brazilian Portuguese, guys. Do all 30 lessons.
I haven't even done Pimsleur.
Well, it's the one I used. It's better to I've done lessons with a I've done lessons with someone teaching me to with a teacher, but um, it's easy to knock out those lessons every day, those 30-minute Pimsleur lessons and the reading included.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I think question for you. How did you end up in Brasilia and why have you decided to keep going back to Brasilia? Is it the family reasons you mentioned or what do you like about Brasilia?
Couple of things. It's a very safe place to be, so I don't have to worry about. I'm not that worried about like getting kidnapped or something like that. But man, if I got my laptop stolen or my phone stolen, it's a pain in the ass. It's not like you can go to the Apple store. It's not like in the States where you're like, hey man, they took my Apple phone. Okay, we'll get you another one. It'll be out to you tomorrow. It's a big deal to take care of that. So that's part of it. So my business partner's from here, so she knows a lot of people here, and I lived here for 4 months last year. I liked it. I get massages. They have float tanks here. It's a progressive place. The food's quite good. Oh man, a suga de burg. I had one of the best steaks I've had in a long time in Brazil. Um, you know, Probably the only thing that beats it is some of the steak places like Prime 112 in Miami. But like, I paid $60 for like a gourmet steak meal here. So the restaurants are quite good. The women here, they're more oriented towards work and education. So it's not a party city.
Yeah,
It's
better
more
English too.
educated. Yeah, better English. Yeah, for sure. And so I like the
Like
vibe of the
if
city.
you had to guess like where's the best English in Brazil, it's Sao Paulo, it's Rio, it's Brasilia, and like maybe like Floripa.
Yeah, yeah. I would agree with that based on my experience for sure.
Yeah, and that's cool that they are. People have. I've heard mixed reports of Brasilia for that same reason because it is a more government city, being the capital of Brazil, and it's a more career-oriented city. But that seems to be a good balance for you.
Yeah, people. What Brazilians will say is they'll move here. It's what they'll say is that it's hard to meet people here because it's very cliquish, and a lot of people who grow up here, they're in their own like little groups, and it's hard to break into that, especially I guess for the more educated and successful folks. So it's got more of that, maybe a little more snobby vibe. But for me, I'm coming from Miami, right? So if people are rude and snobbish here in Brasilia, it's like, oh my gosh, I'll take this all day long because the culture in Miami is, yeah, it's next level, especially like the new areas of Miami, Miami Beach. But what you say is something to consider depending on where you're coming from, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to spend a bit more time trying to capture the essence of Brazil and kind of the people. Maybe you've heard the
Sure.
phrase. How do you say it? The best of Brazil is the Brazilian. O melhor do Brasil é o brasileiro. Have you heard that one before?
I haven't actually. No, I've heard they say everything is the best, right? O melhor. sorvete do Brasil. You know what I mean? They say everything is the best in Brazil for the, but yeah, I agree with that though. Brazilians and Brazilian culture, it's what makes a place.
Yeah. Maybe you have a couple anecdotes, Ted, about just times where you were surprised, like how nice people were, or how quickly an interaction progressed and you were invited to someone's house or someone helped you out with a task, cool, kind of wholesome anecdotes like that.
Yeah, I remember when I was going to Floripa for the first time, it was weird, it was like I felt it was just kind of, I got a weird energy. It was after I had recovered from COVID and I was just learning Portuguese, so I didn't feel that comfortable. And I was on the plane ride to Floripa and I sat next to a Brazilian girl and we just talked the entire time. And she was married. There was no like, oh yeah, let's hook, it was nothing. It was just like conversation. And so, and she was like, oh, you got to talk to my cousin. He does, he does scuba diving. And oh, I forgot Bombinhas in a city
Hmm.
that's near Floripa. They don't do scuba diving in Floripa. They do it in the city that's close.
Yep.
And is it
Yeah, near
Bombinhas?
Cambor. Yeah, it's near Camboriú.
Yeah. And so she's like, "Oh, my cousin." And so she introduced me. And also one other thing, usually when you have that plane conversation, like as soon as the plane ride's over, it's like off. And she like waited for me to walk off the plane and like it was just nice, you know? And I've never been to, even on the way to Colombia a few times, I've been in conversations with people, but or Mexico. Mexicans are cool too, but Brazilian, like I've never had someone do that before. And it was even in the States. And she would just we walked together. And again, there wasn't any sort of any other agenda other than like two people who talked and have a connection, and we didn't exchange information. I got her cousin's number and we just went our separate ways, but it was more pleasant than that usual plane conversation that gets real awkward when people are trying to leave the airplane.
Definitely. Ted, do you still drink?
I do, but I don't. So I don't say no, man, I don't drink. But I just haven't. The last time I've had alcohol was in Lisbon, where I tried Ginginha, the cherry liquor, and they serve it in a chocolate shot cup, which is incredible. So that's the last time I've drank. But I enjoy wine, but for some reason I haven't been able to kind of bring myself to drink much lately.
Do you find in Brazil there's like a different type of peer pressure to drink?
Man, you know what? I'm gonna change my story here because I told you that I had gone to this art dealer's house and she has these art exhibitions and it's like part of an installation of her mansion here in Brasilia. And so I was over at her house for dinner and her husband just would not leave me alone about the wine. And it was really good wine too. So that's actually the last time that I drank. And he was quite insistent. And I'm okay. I don't get I left most of the wine just sitting there, but I took a few sips and it was probably the best white wine I've ever had. I'm not a huge, like, very knowledgeable about wines in general. And certainly I like red more than white. So I don't know much about white wines, but it was really good. So there is a culture of drinking here, but
The
that's
botecos.
the botecos. Yeah. But I don't know it. That's not something I have a lot of experience with. No.
Yeah, for some reason I can't really see you at the boteco with a 40 ounce and a fried empanada, aka a pastel.
Yeah, yeah. I've had pastels and I've the empadão goianos and the what else? Brigadeiros, beijinhos,
Yeah,
pão de queijo.
yeah.
I've had it all, but yeah, I don't hang out. I actually, I've been to a boteco in Miami, and that's when I was drinking more. Yeah, caipirinhas. Used to love caipirinhas, but I haven't even had one since I've been to Brazil. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. Brazil, I mean, Brazil is definitely a very fitness focused culture. I think I've heard that Brazil has like the most gyms per capita of any country in the world. Does that ring true for you?
Man, I love the fitness focus here compared to even Medellin, which, people look after themselves there. They dress well and the gyms are popular. But Smart Fit, which is um, all over South America, it's a Brazilian
Hmm.
brand,
Hmm.
a Brazilian business. And so, yeah, I mean, from what I've experienced, way more fitness oriented. If you're in Bergamar in Floripa, people are running, they're on bikes, they're walking, and the gyms are super busy. Um, yeah, it's way more fitness oriented than Mexico or Colombia, or,
Yeah. That must be one of the best parts for you.
for sure. For sure. I really connect with the culture in that way. Also, I feel like, I'm not like some, I say, oh, I got a brown belt and done Muay Thai. I'm just, I did some competitions back in my day, but I'm no like, badass or anything. But I'm not concerned so much about like, oh, this guy wants to fight you or something like that. Like, which is something I don't, I should put that a little bit better. I do believe you got to kind of walk around. You can't be like, you can't have a target on your back here, in South America in general. You got to look like you can handle yourself, and you'll just avoid less trouble. But in Colombia, it's like, okay, either a guy's got to have a gun or a knife, or there's no problem. I'm going to be able to handle myself. But in Brazil, man, people are big here. They're tall. Wait, I'm barely pushing 6 feet. People are tall here. They're in shape. Um, there's a culture of like, there's a lot of Brazilian black belt, Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt. So like, it's a really cool place, but I also find there's less, at least in my experience. I know fights break out everywhere, and certainly in Miami, but and certainly here as well. But like, I just, there's not that vibe. I've never been in a situation where
Yeah, yeah.
whoa, this guy wants to fuck me up here. He wants to. Whereas, and I can remember in Medellin, this dude was walking behind me right before I got into my hotel. Now he was a small dude and probably wasted, but and just for no reason, a street maniac. It's not like I said anything or did anything to him. He just saw a green go, just kind of went for it, and
Jeez.
yeah, I mean, it was no problem. But even
So,
if he
so
would have
question
came
for
up to
you.
me, sure.
Um, so you did some BJJ when you were in Miami before ever even coming to Brazil. I guess you've done some BJJ training now in Brazil. Was there an adaptation process?
Yeah, you know what? I have not trained Brazilian Jiu Jitsu in Brazil, weirdly enough. Maybe I'll make it happen before I've trained more Muay Thai lately these days. So I've trained more Muay Thai in Brazil. And ironically, not ironically, but coincidentally, Brazilians are highly respected in Thailand for their
For
Muay Thai
sure,
ability.
for sure. Have
So
you
so I
tried
haven't
have you tried
trained.
capoeira?
No, man, I've seen it. I appreciate it, but I've got a lot of injuries. So it's like I'll be safer hitting pads and like even some light sparring than I will trying to do like the backflips and the craziness that capoeira people do. I'd rather take a shot to the ribs or something than try to do some of those athletic moves. But it's
Man,
very
I feel
cool.
like
I've
it's the
seen
logical
it.
next step. It's resistance bands and then it's backflips.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Sure. One arm backflips. Yeah. I'm from a MMA school in Miami. They actually use capoeira in MMA. The two people who are like the head coaches. One's Daniel Valverde, who's the guy who gave me my brown belt, world jiu-jitsu champion and South American judo champ, and his partner Caesar is like a capoeira master, and they use it. in MMA.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
no, I was just
it's
kind of wondering in
legit.
general if going from like an American gym, even with good world respected trainers, and then going to a Brazil gym, did you almost feel like they were just way better in Brazil?
Man, I gotta train with people here, but I was training with Cyborg Abreu in fight sports in Miami. I mean,
Hmm.
the dude's Brazilian. He's a world champion, one of the best. Uh, I mean, during his time, I don't know who's popular or winning all the championships now, but I think Americans, man, I think, you know, I don't know. I don't know what the scene's like anymore, but I'll tell you enough has changed. Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, especially with grappling, it's like it's not Brazilian Jiu Jitsu anymore in the sense that like it's been merged into what's Brazilian Jiu Jitsu now is like Sambo, American wrestling, Greco Roman wrestling. It's just like shoot fighting, like all this stuff. Brazilians just took everything and the sport has evolved so fast, but certainly they're the ones that led the way. So I don't know who's where it's better or who's winning what now, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of the best people were in the States.
Hmm. So you've been in Brazil for a while now. I think you only told me before we started recording, but you're headed to Portugal next.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
why Portugal?
Great question. Like I've never been to Europe and had that full European experience. And I went to Lisbon earlier this year and I was dating this Brazilian girl. She ended up moving there. We ended up splitting ways after dating for the better part of a year. But
She moved
um,
to Portugal on you.
she moved there, and then we have kind of one of the reasons is like I'm moving around. She's moving, like
Yeah, yeah,
she
yeah.
moved to
Just doesn't
Portugal.
work
So I
out. It happens to me all the time.
exactly it can be tough unless you really feel like, hey, we're gonna make this work no matter what, because the chemistry is there. And she's got some things that she wants to do in her life. And so anyway, um, I went there earlier and I just fell in love with the place. I'll tell you though, I don't know if you know Portuguese from Portugal. I thought I was going to go there. I'm like, man, I'm going to step my Portuguese game up. So I'm going to go to Portugal. And it's like
Hmm.
they speak completely differently. It's like not even worth, and they all
Yeah,
speak
my
English
my
there.
listening comprehension with Portuguese is much lower.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, exactly, super low. And I struggle here with fast conversations, but there it's just like, man, I can tell like one every 5 or 6 words. And it's so different. The slang's different, the accent's different. But what I do like is
Now's your
it
chance, by the way.
I don't want to speak it. I think I apologize if any Portuguese people are listening, but it's like I'm going to just stick with Brazilian Portuguese. They call it brasileiro there. They don't call it Portuguese.
Ah.
They
Okay,
call it
sorry, I cut you off
brasileiro.
though.
What's that?
I cut you off though.
Oh yeah, with the
You had an
experience
idea.
why I'm heading out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it for one thing, I really fell in love with Brazil. I didn't know that much about Brazil other than the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu experience and hanging out with that crowd in Miami. And then when I got to Portugal, the same thing. Like we get taught about Spanish and the Spanish, all the exploration that the Spanish did. But then I went to Portugal and I was like, man, these guys, they have a really powerful history. Some good, some of it's amazing, some of it's nothing to be proud of, and it's a very complicated situation with Brazilians, with Brazil and Portugal. But that aside, like there's a lot of Brazilians there, and so I like that about it. It's Lisbon in particular. It's not just Brazilians there are there. It's like it's just one of the hottest cities in the world right now, and I really love the energy of it. Um, and
Yeah.
so it's
Would you
got
say
like
that Lisbon is one of the hottest cities right now, or most popular cities?
it's one of the hottest cities in the world for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's getting it's getting harder to get an Airbnb there during the summertime. I never heard much about Portugal, never cared about going there, but then people started talking about it maybe 10 years ago, and then like heard more and more about it, and then finally had the opportunity, and um, fell in love. Uh, and yeah, it's a lot of the things that I like about South America with a lot of the things that I don't like. I feel safer walking around the streets of Lisbon, certainly than I do in Miami. It's super safe. The
Hmm.
violence is extremely low in Portugal in general. It's a small population, small country too. Maybe that has something to do with it. But yeah, it's just I really like the vibe there, and it's exploding with startups, and they're it's just a city. It's a good city to buy a place in. I'm really looking to see if I can make that happen too. There's a I would like to have that
Yeah, I know what you mean.
little home
I've
base.
actually been looking into setting up a base in Portugal myself.
Yeah, it's a good for taxes, good for so many things, right?
Hmm. And would you just start in Portugal and kind of do a whole Euro trip, or are you really trying to double down on Portugal?
Double down on my business right now, because if I do that for the rest of the year, I'll be able to do a lot more next year. So that's really the focus. But but yeah, I would love to see. I want to see Barcelona. Make my way over to Paris. I mean, like I'll make something. I got a couple months before I got to go to Mexico for my client, so I'll make something happen.
Yeah. What would doubling your business or doubling down on your business look like?
Yeah, it would. Well, I'm doing it right now. I'm getting on more podcasts. This is my second podcast today. I'm
Thank you,
working on
thank you.
writing more. Yeah, I love it. I love having these conversations, even though it's you're not, we're not talking about what I typically talk about, but I'm really passionate about travel, even though it's not my business. But it's getting better at social media, getting better at writing. I'm in a writing course right now. It's just changing the game for me, because one of the things is just being able to, I've got so much experience and knowledge. It's like, but I really struggle to convey it in a meaningful way. So I'll say, man, I've been in this business 23 years. Don't you know how much I know? And people are like, no, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it sounds like a long time. So just getting better at communicating and sharing what I know,
Hmm.
um, doing more interviews, having people on my show. Yeah. And just, yeah, getting the systems in place, training my assistant coach.
Definitely. Question for you. So you've done over 500 podcasts or audio recordings of some nature. What have you learned from doing hundreds of podcasts? What have been some of your biggest aha moments?
Sure, I'll start with some of the more harder lessons is that you have one impression to make with a new listener. And it's not someone's going to come to your show and hear your information and go, man, that guy sucks. Although I have had that happen. But and they left a review on Apple or iTunes rather. But really, what I'm more afraid of, because I think most people can tell I'm coming from a place of wanting to help and be of service,
Hmm.
um, is people showing up, hearing like an average episode and go like, okay, I'm never coming back here. It's not like a screw this guy. It's more like, no, that was not very good at all, and I'll never come back, because it's just so. So you really got to put out great information and hold yourself to a high standard, but at the same time, you've got to understand that you're only going to get better by being consistent and putting in the work, but certainly working on the delivery. So that's something I learned. Um, Another thing that I learned is that that who you spend time with is really important, and it shows up in a podcast in the way that, like, you and I are having this conversation. I've had so many people on my show, experts who I would have to pay money to talk to because we have no relationship other than, like a professional one, let's say. And then
Hmm.
they sit down and I get to ask them whatever I want. And I get instantly smarter by having that conversation.
Which reminds me, Ted, I need to know how to get the perfect six pack right now. No, I'm
Oh
joking.
yeah.
I'm joking. Just joking. Yeah, no, I think it's a great way to to network with experts.
Yeah, I got my first keynote speech from doing a podcast from a listener. A listener reached out to me and we had a conversation. She shared something personal with me. I helped her, and this was before I had any um, coaching programs or anything. I ended up getting my first keynote speech from her, and she's actually a coaching client in my coaching group right now, and she's crushing it. She's I've helped her more than the whole 30 has ever helped her or any of these other things. And so there's business opportunities in creating relationships um, through podcasting, and just so many opportunities can come about this through this. And
Hmm.
I'd say
Do
something
you guys
else
run ads
for what?
on the podcast? Like, do you guys have sponsors?
Oh, sponsorships. We're going to probably go back to that, but we don't now. We
Okay.
don't now, but we're going to look into doing that. We've been using the podcast as a way to kind of, help people, but also as a lead generation
Yeah,
to
build a
if people
relationship.
want.
And then how
Yeah.
do you have like some sort of call to action? And then what are you trying to direct people to? Like, how do you convert them from a listener to someone that furthers the relationship with Ted Ryce and Legendary Life and, gets more involved?
Yeah. I think probably, well, what we ask is, for example, I ask people to keep the conversation going with me on Twitter is one thing I ask. Another thing is if people do feel like they want body transformation coaching, I ask them to hop on a call with me and then we talk. And it's not like I'm not selling a piece of like Louis Vuitton luggage where it's like, oh, well, it's nice. It holds your stuff. It, holds up to travel well. And then they buy it and they, go use it and we never have to talk ever again. It's like once they buy into coaching, it's a relationship and it's
Hmm.
months long. And
Hmm.
the relationship between a coach and the person coaching them, coach and coachee, probably the most important thing for results. Um, if I'm honest, it's like the strategies are important, but if there's not a good, solid foundation there with just that personal connection, probably not going to go too far. So that's the call to action is to hop on a call with me if they're a founder, CEO, entrepreneur, high performer of some sort, busy professional of some sort, and they want to take their health to that next level in their body, in particular, their body fat, grow muscle, and just get to that next level. Um, yeah, hop on a call and let's talk. This is the
Yeah.
CTA.
And what does your ideal client look like?
Um, yeah, I have ideal clients. So some of my clients are, I'm thinking about one now. He's got to lose maybe 60, 70 pounds. Um, I love working with the guy. He just sold his company. So he's really looking to get his health handled. So he's 60, looking to get his health handled. And he's just like, it's really a big deal for him to conquer this area of his life. And he's willing to put in the work and invest the money and time into making it happen. So that's an example of a client I've worked with. There's Trevor, who's 47. Trevor has been giving me a lot of referrals because he was already in decent shape at 17% body fat, but we cut him down all the way to 12. Maybe even he might be even a little bit lower now, but he's ripped. People are telling him he's got a perfect body, and he says, "Man, I'm almost a little embarrassed sometimes taking off my shirt. It's like I feel like a woman might feel if they've just got a boob job, And because he's very he just looks like he looks like Brad Pitt Fight Club, and but yet he's drinking alcohol and eating in restaurants, so people can tell he's enjoying his life too, and he's got the glow, right, where he's not
Hmm.
like shredded, but like, no, I can't eat anything. Pass me another piece of broccoli and chicken breast. He just came back from vacation in Maui and was in Italy and eating pasta, and he's living life. But he was a very different situation. He was already doing quite well, working out hard, but needed some help going to that next level.
Hmm. Would you say most of your clients are just need an extra push, get to the next level type of guys, or they're more serious cases where they need to go undergo a more drastic transformation?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I would answer it. There's two types of clients. There's clients who really they're working hard with strategies. Most of their life is taken care of. It's in a good place. But they're just the strategies they're using aren't working. And I've been in this business for a long time. I know how to get people results with strategies. And so a lot of people just need the right strategies and they just don't know because they're an expert at whatever they're an expert in. Like I'm not an expert in, running a sales company or brokering
Yeah.
commercial real estate
No,
deals.
I get it.
I've
It's
got
like
no
most people
idea.
want a mentor in every aspect
Exactly.
of their life.
Yeah, and you get results much faster. I've got a business coach. I got a I've had a Brazilian jiu-jitsu coach. And so anyway, there's those types of people. And then the second type of person is more like they need executive coaching. So I'll give them the strategies and then they won't work. And what most people think is like, no, there must be something wrong with my hormones or whatever
Hmm.
the story they might be telling themselves. And the reality is there needs to be some changes because usually it's stress or sleep or stress that's sabotaging their progress. And so if you're not dealing with the root cause of the stress and changing the ways you cope with the negative emotions that come up as a result of the stress, then you can have the best strategies, but you're not going to implement them in a way that gives you results.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. So question for you. Do you see yourself I know you said that you're looking to go back to Mexico in a couple months, maybe the start of the new year. Do you see yourself going back to Brazil and continuing to spend a significant amount of time in Brazil?
Absolutely. I think I'll probably end up married to a Brazilian girl. I mean, it could happen otherwise, but I'll end up married. And, I really like the family oriented nature of the culture here. I don't have any family anymore, any immediate family. So I really like that about the culture. Um, and certainly one of the things I want to do, I want to go to Maranhão,
Hmm.
Fernando, Ginoronha,
Hmm.
all the amazing places, Jalapão, all these places that I haven't been able to go. Brazil is just one of the things I like about it too. As you know, it just has all this amazing. It's a huge country, so there's all these
It's a
different
continent.
places. Exactly, exactly. And so I definitely will be spending more time here and exploring more.
Mm. So when you go to Portugal, you're going to be focusing on Brazilian friend making,
Yeah, I'm already talking to women there, and there's a lot of Ukrainians and Russians and Portuguese and French and Italians, but who I end up connecting with is usually Brazilians.
for
I'm
sure, and it's
open to
easy to meet
whatever,
them.
but
Yeah, no, I agree. When I'm back in Canada or the States, I still sort of target Latinas because I just have the playbook. I know exactly what I want to say, like when I get on a date, and I just overall just prefer the vibe and everything.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's so funny. Um, I wanted to ask like one or two more questions about Brazil,
Let's do it.
and I'm gonna cut the pause while I think. Yeah, so I guess, as we're wrapping up, one of my last questions would just be like, how much are you thinking of like a cohesive international strategy? Because it sounds like you do want to spend a lot of your time outside the United States. Um, a significant portion of your year outside the US. Have you considered like truly setting up a base either in Brazil or in another Latin American jurisdiction or something like that to sort of um, make a more sort of formal push outside the United States?
I'm thinking of I'm not gonna give up my citizenship or anything like that, but I would like to I wanna buy a place, and is it gonna be in Brazil or is it gonna be in Lisbon and have that be my base of operations? I'm not sure yet, but, but one thing so one thing all my clients or at least the majority I've got a Norwegian client, UK clients and that Canadian clients, but most of my clients come from the US. One thing I'm really excited about doing is and what I'm doing in Mexico, the reason I'm going back there is for an incline experience, but like to have more breakthrough experiences live with people. So that's what I'm really excited about. And I want to
Mm,
merge travel with that because the people who I usually attract love to travel as well. And so taking people to Brazil and doing something with them there, or like my client who's going to meet me in Mexico, yeah, we're going to do all the health and fitness stuff, and he's going to come back with a solid strategy to get better results. But we're going to do some breakthrough stuff. We're going to do something involving scuba diving there,
mhm.
and also there's a breath work person. So I'm going to create these breakthrough
Are you
experiences
going
for
back to Playa del
people.
Carmen?
Yeah, uh-huh.
Do you got is the breathwork guy's name George or Georgie?
Her name is Sabine and
It's
she's
a girl.
from Vienna.
Okay. Yeah, maybe
But it's
they're
good to know
connected.
there's
I
someone
know,
else there.
yeah, there's a couple like breathwork experts that hold workshops in Playa.
Yeah, it's a good place for things like that.
Sweet. So you're gonna go back to Playa, also one of my favorite spots. Hopefully things potentially line up for us to meet up in person, potentially in Europe this fall if I end up setting up this base in Portugal that I'm looking into. Or maybe in Playa del Carmen if I go pop in and visit the squad down there. So it'd be cool to meet up in person at some point.
Yeah, let's do it. Love to connect with people, and I would even say to people listening right now, you know, that saying about your network, it's so important to get out off the internet and go meet people in person. It's going to make you healthier. It's going to improve your opportunities. It's going to change the way you um, see your life. Yeah, make sure let's do it, Vance. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think it's scientific too. Like it'll literally change the flow of hormones and testosterone and all that in the body if you go out and hang out with a bunch of people.
Yeah, certainly it increases feel good chemicals, and too many of us, especially like us guys who are like running our businesses or girls who are running their businesses online, it's like um, you really feel it then. I used to have such a social job when I was in Miami and doing personal training, but now I'm just staring at computers all day long or iPhones. And to get out, you really feel the difference. But yeah, it's just the network is the key. Hanging out with other high level people. There's a cool squad in Playa as well, uh, that I was hanging out with towards the end of the year. I mean, we were going to the Hyatt Spa instead of the happy hour. We would go to the Hyatt Spa and do cold plunges and sit in the
Mm,
saunas and have these crazy conversations about crypto and other types of things. And you just learn so much. Who you hang out with, it really affects um, the level of conversations that you're having. It really affects your mindset, how you see things, and certainly your opportunities.
hmm. Yeah, for everyone rags on Playa del Carmen, but there's definitely a lot of really interesting people there, and you can have some really high IQ discussions with the people that you meet there.
Yeah, on La Quinta, they'll try to sell you cocaine every block. You just politely decline, and you keep going.
Yeah.
And
There's definitely a whole side to Playa that's very spiritual, and there are people that don't go out at all, and they're just kind of all about the yoga and the beach and maybe entrepreneurship. So there's different sides to the city for sure.
yeah, 100%.
And Ted, I really gotta give it to you. I mean, I gotta hand it to you that you went from just being a on-site personal trainer in Miami in the States, which is very different from being an online focused personal trainer with a brand and all the online marketing skills that you must have had to learn along the way, and the transition from word to mouth to more building a public facing brand. And not everyone can make that transition. It's not easy, and it seems like you've pulled it off.
Yeah, man. Things are going well, and it's not easy, like you said, but when you know something's right for you, you got to go for it. And I always knew there was something about this whole online world that was right for me. So I went for it, and the time's going to pass anyway. So might as well go for your dreams.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds like you're living an interesting life, and that's why we wanted to have you on the My Latin Life podcast. And I can tell the future is going to be full of just as much adventure.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Vance. I really appreciate you having me on today. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I feel like you're just getting started. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been with business, we've been doing well for a while, but certainly like it's gonna be next year is gonna be look very different. And if I could give any advice out there, I was struggling business wise, and I hired a coach
Mm,
to help me. And when I hired a coach, I went from making a couple grand a month to we've had 40 grand months, and it's not just about the money, because you can hustle your ass off and make money, but what a lot of people can't do is also make money in a way that doesn't like burn them out and make them hate their life.
hmm.
And the instruction, hiring someone to help you, getting someone to help you can help so much.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's what I meant. Was like I feel like 2023 is going to be your 10x year.
Thanks, Vance. I think so too, man. I'm a more short, I'm not a business sort of guy. I'm having to learn it, like you alluded to earlier. It's been hard to make that transition from coach to CEO, right? Or whatever I'm supposed to call myself. But
Yeah.
it's yeah. It's going to be an interesting 2023, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, cheers to more 40K months. And Ted, thank you for coming on the My Latin Life podcast. It was a pleasure to hear about your experiences, digging into entrepreneurship, traveling the world, spending basically a whole year in Brazil. And the traveling sounds like it's going to keep going, and you're going to see lots of tropical beaches in the near future. And super excited for you.
Yeah, and we'll clink glasses one of these days, either in Lisbon or maybe in Playa.
Yeah, we'll have a protein shake. I'll be working out with you. You can't tell, but I'm in shape too.
I don't doubt that at all.
Cool, man. Well, thanks again. I appreciate it. And yeah, thanks everyone for listening to another episode of the My Latin Life podcast.